Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Listen, it's April. I'll say this. It's supposed to slow down when there's no games going on in college sports outside of college baseball. Things are only getting crazier as time goes on, and we have ourselves a loaded midweek show for you. Loaded show. Here's what you need to know. We're going to open Nico Iamaleava. We have to talk about the fallout of this week for Nico, okay? Bottom line, you don't need me to tell you, but right now, it does not feel like Nico's options are very good. I'm just going to say it. I think his dad screwed this thing up 7 ways to Sunday. We'll discuss Nico, the latest, where he may end up, where he certainly will not end up, and is he going to take a pay cut? From there is a lot of college hoops to get to. Everybody worried about John Calipari. What's going on with Coach Cal? He can't land anybody. Well, in the last, 2 hours, he has landed 2 different guys. That roster is coming together. And I think the big thing for Arkansas, can they retain some of the players that they already have? We'll talk a little bit about Lamar Wilkerson. Yes, it was 24 hours ago that I said that I thought the lean was Kentucky. He commits to Indiana. What does that mean for Darren DeVree? We'll talk a little bit about UConn, who got their own portal good news this week. We'll talk a little bit. Did you see this story? Tyran Stokes, the number 1 player in the class of 2026, taking his first visit. I think there's something more there. We're going to discuss it all in just one moment. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. We have surpassed 54,000 subscribers. We're closing in on 55,000 subscribers. So thank you for your support there. We really do appreciate it. Also, while we're here, podcast, make sure to subscribe. I'm putting the link in the YouTube description here. But, all right, let's do that. All right, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Make sure you're also subscribed on the podcast feed, okay? Podcast, it's still important. Yes, we're growing YouTube. Yes, it matters. Yes, it's important. You want to do your boy Torres a favor, though. Subscribe on Apple, subscribe on YouTube, or subscribe on Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Download the podcast there as well. Also, before we get started, it is that time of year. You already know what it is. It is time to thank our friends. It is time to thank our partners. It's time to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so I've been telling you about Collie Puffs for close to 8 months now. We started with Collie Puffs to start college football season. We are still rocking with them. We appreciate their support. But here's what you need to know about our favorite partner, Collie Puffs, okay? This is a family-owned company not far from where I live. This is the alternative healthy snack to the crap in your grocery aisle. You don't want those Doritos. You don't want those Fritos. Summer is coming up. You got to get your beach body right. And so you need a snack that is healthy but delicious, okay? As I said, family-owned company. Joey, the founder, is a huge sports fan. He was part of our Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. He's been part of our bracket challenges before. And basically, he was sitting around one day on the couch watching games saying, listen, I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. I need something my kids are going to like that I'm going to like as well. And he came up with Collie Puffs. Bake, not fry, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste delicious. For more information, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. ColliePuffs.com. You can also go to Amazon.com as well. Search Amazon. Just go to Amazon, search Collie Puffs, throw them in your cart. I know you got a cart going already. You don't need me to know. I don't want to know what's going on in that cart of yours. But throw some Collie Puffs in. Try them on Amazon. Try them on ColliePuffs.com. Tell them Torres sent you. We appreciate your support. ColliePuffs.com. By the way, lively chat going on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, do me a favor. Make sure to go and find us on YouTube as well. But with that said, I'll tell you what. It is a busy middle of the week. There is no more time to waste. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Listen, I'll tell you this. It feels like there are a lot of different places we could start. There are obviously a lot of news items coming out of the world of college basketball. But where I want to start is, again, the world of college football. I think maybe the biggest story in college sports over the course of the last couple months. It is the Nico Iamaleava mess, the previous quarterback at Tennessee that is no more. And look, we talked about this on Sunday night show. We're not going to relive and relitigate what we discussed on Sunday night. But at the same time, this has now become a national story. They were talking about it on First Take. They were talking about it. Cowherd was talking about it. Jason Whitlock was talking about it. A lot of places that don't talk college sports and certainly don't talk college football in the middle of April were discussing this thing over the last couple of days. It is huge. It is big. And there is some major fallout for Nico Iamaleava. None of it is good, as it is not looking like he is going to go to a better football situation than at Tennessee. And if you believe some of the schools that are involved, he might have to drop down to the group of 5, and he is certainly not going to get that $4 million that I think that he and his camp expected when he went and entered the portal. And so I want to break it all down. I want to discuss the new item lines, the new pieces of information, because I'll tell you this, like my big picture takeaway, let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right to the lead of this story. I think Nico's dad, I think Nico's camp has screwed this up about as much as any human being could. And I think they basically did essentially everything wrong. Okay. So listen, by now we know the Nico story. As I said, I don't think there's much to discuss in terms of what happened in the past, okay? But at the end of the day, the baseline facts are pretty simple. Starting quarterback on a college football playoff team. By the way, if you're a Vol fan tuning in, make sure to check out our Torres on the Vols page. But listen, Tennessee was in great shape, makes the college football playoff last year. And I don't think it's any secret, right? It's like, I think the Iamaleava camp is like, well, wait a second now. We just made the college football playoff. The market for quarterbacks is going up. So he originally signs that deal coming out of high school. $2 million for a quarterback seemed absolutely insane at the time. Now it's kind of just the going rate. And so I think Nico and his camp assumed that, we're going to play hardball. We're going to play tough to get. We're going to make sure that we get the new market price. And Tennessee basically told him to kick rocks. And so what is new since we last spoke about this story? You know about all that. There's nothing new. Well, I'll tell you this. I thought it was interesting when it became clear that Nico was frankly no longer going to be welcomed back at Tennessee. I think what became pretty obvious pretty clearly is that I think there were a lot of people out there that said, okay, this isn't a good situation, but Nico's going to have options, right? I mean, former 5-star, he's got all the tools. He could be an NFL quarterback if it all comes together. And so when he decided to enter the portal, you started to see all these big name schools kind of linked to Nico, right? Well, he's from LA, so USC is going to make a phone call, and Lincoln Riley, he needs another 5-star quarterback, and why wouldn't he go after Nico? UCLA, maybe they get in the mix. Notre Dame, they need a quarterback after, losing Riley Leonard to graduation this past year. What about Texas Tech? All that oil money. Bill Belichick does not have a quarterback at North Carolina that he trusts. And so you started to see these names and you started to feel like, okay, well, if things go to plan, he's still going to end up in a good spot. He's certainly going to get the money that he had at Tennessee, and he might even get a little bit more money than he was originally anticipating. Well, if you've been paying close attention, it is pretty clear that that is not the case, okay? So the first thing they screwed up, and we're going to talk about how exactly they screwed up. The market for Nico just certainly is not as big as we thought, okay? USC has no interest. They have a starting quarterback in Jaden Maiava that's returning. They're good. We're going to rock with him. Bill Belichick. I thought the Belichick UNC stuff didn't really make sense to me because ultimately, I've been following Bill Belichick's career for a long time. Overpaying for a quarterback does not sound like something Bill Belichick is going to do in college, in the pros, in the NIL era. And so I only bring it up because over the last couple days, we've gotten a few very interesting reports, okay? It came out on Monday afternoon that the 3 schools that could hypothetically be interested, Notre Dame doesn't seem to want him. USC doesn't seem to want him. Could Carolina be interested? Tulane and then UCLA. Okay, so those were the 3 schools that get linked to Nico Iamaleava. The 3 schools are UNC, Tulane, and UCLA, Tulane, and North Carolina. Well, we immediately find out that, as I just said, North Carolina is not out of the picture. Then I thought it was really interesting about a few hours ago as I'm getting ready to do this show, as I'm starting to tape, we get a report that, oh, by the way, North Carolina is out. And also, how about this from Pete Nakos, the guy who's been all over the story? Tulane is now pulling out of the Nico Iamaleava sweepstakes. So the guy who 12 or whatever it was, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, was literally starting in a playoff game, Tulane is not interested. And that's on top of North Carolina. That's on top of UNC. That's on top of everybody else. And then, oh, by the way, we get the second report, the one that I had up correctly. How about this for a follow-up report? This is from On3. Multiple schools are waiting to see if Tennessee transfer quarterback Nico Iamaleava's NIL demands drop in the coming days, Pete Nakos reports. Multiple programs are ready to become contenders if he is open to a deal closer than to $1 million, okay? And so I only bring it up because, listen, I'm not an economist. I'm not the father of a high school football star. I'm not the father of a five-star. But how about the situation that Nico Iamaleava's camp, headlined by his father, has put Nico Iamaleava in? He is certainly not going to end up in a place that is a better football situation than Tennessee, okay? There are not appearing to be college football playoff contenders knocking on the door, believing that Nico Iamaleava is the difference. But then to take it a step further, it's going to be a worse situation with worse teammates, worse coaching, because Josh Heupel, whatever you think about Josh Heupel, is a great offensive play caller. He's an offensive savant. But then, on top of it, Nico Iamaleava is probably going to have to take a 50% pay cut. And so basically, if you're going to put yourself in this situation, one of two things has to happen. You either got to put yourself in a better football situation, or you got to be making way more money to make it worthwhile to leave Tennessee. And it looks like Nico Iamaleava is going to get neither. And so when I look at this situation, I'm just going to say it. I think that there is, in my opinion, how about this? I believe that Nico's family, and I truly believe this in my heart of hearts, they have screwed this up about as badly as you possibly can. And I can't think of a situation that has blown up bigger than this one has, because, it was funny when all this happened, 3, 4, 5 days ago. It's like, this is going to set the wrong precedent in the NIL era. And what's it mean? Guys are going to hold out. It's like, well, there's the counter to that too, which is, what if you don't have a very good deal? And what if it backfires and you don't end up in a better situation than you were in, which it looks like it's exactly what's going to happen. And so I was thinking about this. Like I said, I think the family, the camp, whoever is making decisions has made about as poor decision-making as you possibly could for this kid and for this situation, okay? I was thinking about this. First of all, let me say this. I don't think it was the right decision at any point to try and hold Tennessee hostage for more money, okay? I was thinking about this. I don't think it was the right decision. It's not what I would have advised my son, especially, again, in a season where we all know he was at his best against Vandy and UTEP and Chattanooga, 0 touchdowns against Ohio State, 0 against Florida, 0 against Georgia. So I probably would not have complained about a $2 million salary if I was his family. But I was thinking about this. If you were going to do it, you had to kind of do it in the early portal window, okay? Because I was thinking about this. First of all, think about, what did I just say? The number of schools that actually need a quarterback right now. UCLA, Tulane, only because their quarterback got arrested. UNC appears to be going in. There's just not that many teams. You go back to December, you think about the teams that needed a quarterback. Auburn needed a quarterback, ended up with Jackson Arnold. Florida State needed a quarterback, ended up with Castellanos from Boston College. Who else? Texas A&M, I think, would have been willing to listen if there was an opportunity to bring in a quarterback upgrade over the guys that they had. LSU was going through that mess when Bryce Underwood decommitted. They end up getting Garrett Nussmeier back. But you go on and on down the list. Miami clearly needed a quarterback. They take Carson Beck. Notre Dame may have at least sniffed around back then. The reason I bring it up is because if you needed to go in the portal, if you wanted to go in the portal to try to leverage Tennessee for more money, the time to do it was in December. The time to do it was not now. And here's the other crazy part that I think transparently even I had forgotten until, you just kind of go through the process of all this. is, remember, SEC players cannot transfer within the SEC in the spring portal window. So they skipped the December window. And, there's reports that he was trying to get money back then. But he doesn't enter the portal in December, doesn't try to leverage Tennessee in December. And what ends up happening, now he's going to try to transfer in the spring. He can't transfer to an SEC school. So any of these SEC schools that could have potentially been interested, he can't go there. I see Arkansas fans in the chat. I know his brother is at Arkansas. Even if Arkansas wanted him, and I know they don't, Taylor Green, whatever, Nico could not go to Arkansas. Nico could, if something happened at Auburn or something happened at LSU or something happened at Texas or Texas A&M or Arch Manning, withdraws from school, those schools cannot take Nico Iamaleava. So the baseline of negotiation is, if you are going to try to leverage your current situation for something better, have as many options as you can. And Nico doesn't have that right now. And I think the other thing that stands out is exactly what I just said. If you are going to try to leverage your situation, and again, if I was advising him, if it was my son, I probably would have told him, be happy with $2 million. You were okay last year. You were not great. But if that was my son, you know what I would have said? I would have said, if we are going to try to make this move, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that you have a better offer standing in case Tennessee calls your bluff. Because I think the thing that has become abundantly clear, it seems very obvious to me that the Iamaleava family did not think that Tennessee was going to call their bluff. They did not think that Tennessee was going to tell them to kick rocks, did not think that Tennessee was not going to meet their demands, and very much thought, hey, you guys just made a playoff. You certainly don't want to go into next year without your starting quarterback, so you're going to meet our demands. And so it's fine if you think that way, but when you make it public, when you put out the reports, and I think the Iamaleava camp was behind all this, you better be darn sure that you have a better situation in front of you than the one at Tennessee. In other words, if Tennessee does tell you to kick rocks, you better make sure that there is a better situation out there for you. I think about any of you. I'm sure everybody listening at some point in their life has had a situation where you have to negotiate, renegotiate, whatever. I work for Fox Sports Radio. Now, I would never try to leverage my boss. I love my boss. He's the best boss I've ever had. But if I decided that I wanted something out of Fox Sports Radio that they weren't giving to me, you better darn well believe that I would make sure that I have something on the table, concrete, ready to go. Either a better offer, a better job, more money, whatever it is, before I start going to my boss and making demands. And so you look at this situation for Nico Iamaleava for Tennessee. I think the family has screwed this up about as badly as you possibly could. And I don't know what the answer is, because one of two things is going to happen, and potentially two of two. One, you're almost certainly going to end up in a worse football situation. And I think what is becoming increasingly clear, you're going to end up in a worse financial situation as well. I was thinking about this, even with UCLA. UCLA might be a great fit. I looked this up. I could not believe it. UCLA, Deshaun Foster, their head coach, got paid $3.5 million last year. The head coach made under $4 million, and now you're going to go ask for $4 million to play quarterback there? It ain't going to happen. So I could go on and on. I want to get to some college hoops portal stuff, but I was just blown away watching this all from a distance. Nico Iamaleava, I think that family has screwed this thing up about as bad as they could. Chad is humming. We appreciate your support. Producer Matt is still out. We're going to try to get him back as quickly as we can. He is not feeling very well right now, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to come back. When we do, we have a very, very, very busy conversation to have in the college hoops transfer portal. John Calipari, the Arkansas Razorbacks, they finally make a move after weeks of silence. We will also discuss Lamar Wilkerson. Yes, I'm the idiot that put out a video that suggested that Lamar Wilkerson was going to end up at Kentucky. It ends up being Indiana. I think UConn had an interesting move that we'll discuss. And also, Tyran Stokes, want to discuss that name. Number one player in the class of 2026. An interesting piece of news there. So we got a lot to discuss. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast question. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. By the way, if you're watching on Twitter, go ahead, come find us on YouTube. Obviously, the YouTube chat is humming. We appreciate everybody's support. And I'll tell you what, it is time to dive into some college hoops transfer portal conversation. Why is that? It's because it has been an insane, just an absurd couple days in the transfer portal just since we last talked on Sunday night. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first story that I want to go ahead and get to, it's interesting. Following the portal on a day in, day out basis, it's been fascinating to see all these teams are making big moves. You know, UCLA got Donovan Dent a million years ago, and this school got that guy, and this school's taken 4 different players, and what does it mean? And then there's the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's been a quiet couple weeks for Arkansas outside of kind of, bad news or not surprisingly news that doesn't, news that isn't necessarily bad, but, doesn't really help your 2025, 2026 roster. Because since the season ended, the only 3 pieces of news we've gotten are pretty straightforward. Big Z entering the transfer portal, already committed to play at Illinois with his brother. Also, on top of it, you have Adu Thero declaring for the draft. You have Boogie Flan declaring for the draft. And as of Tuesday morning, April 15th, there had been zero transactions in a positive direction for Arkansas. No players announcing they're returning. No players committing out of the portal. And basically, the only thing that you have 4 freshmen committed for next year, headlined by Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, the 2 McDonald's All-Americans. So that was the story coming into today. And if that was the story coming out of today, we certainly would have had a different conversation. But I'll tell you what, this guy right here, once he gets on a roll, he ain't slowing down. Because on Tuesday, Arkansas got not 1, but 2 different portal commits. As earlier in the day, Nick Pringle, forward, South Carolina, commits to the University of Arkansas. And then, oh, by the way, just a couple minutes ago, right before we went on air, Malik Ewan, the second leading scorer and leading rebounder at Florida State, he also commits to Arkansas. And so with it, you know what I got to ask, baby. I just got one question for you people, and that question is this. Can anything stop the Big Pig Invasion? Can anything stop the Big Pig Invasion? Arkansas 2 commits. By the way, if you want your Big Pig Invasion tee, you already know what you got to do. You got to go to AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. With that said, though, let's go ahead and dive into our boy, Coach Cal, because he made his moves on Tuesday, and we got to discuss, okay? So first of all, Nick Pringle. Let's talk a little bit about him. Nick Pringle, 6'10", forward, has plenty of SEC experience. Began his career at Wofford, then went to Bama for 2 years, was at South Carolina last year. And basically the bottom line is, I'll be real. Take out Malik Ewan for half a second, okay? Independent of Malik Ewan, Nick Pringle is exactly what Arkansas needs, we believe. As I said, we know that there's 2 5-star guards coming in. We'll talk about who could be coming back on the wing. Wink Carter Knox, wink Billy Richmond, maybe in the backcourt, wink DJ Wagner. We'll get back to them in a minute. I apologize that my winking is so terrible, but I just bring it up because at the end of the day, the backcourt in theory could be in good shape. The wing in theory could be in good shape. The front court, though, needed some work, and they needed some toughness and some physicality, okay? We all know how Arkansas' season ended. We don't have to relive it, relitigate it, whatever. But what we know is that in the Sweet 16, Arkansas kind of got punked on the boards. Texas Tech had, about 18 offensive rebounds? Something crazy like that. I can't remember all the details. I'm getting old. All these stories and stuff run together. But Texas Tech kind of bullied them on the glass and kind of bullied them on the offensive glass specifically. And so in that game, I'm going to look it up right now because it's going to kill me if I forget. Let's see here. At Texas Tech, I hate to do it, but they out-rebounded Arkansas by 12. They had a grand total of 22 offensive rebounds. And so the one thing I can tell you about Cal is this. I've been following Cal's career since UMass, but certainly been covering it kind of on an almost day-to-day basis since he got to Kentucky 15 years ago. One thing I can tell you about Cal, if something, I think this is most coaches, but if something costs his team a chance at a title, he's going to make sure that that gets fixed in the offseason. But then two, the one thing I can tell you about Cal definitively, and I was told this years ago by people who covered Kentucky, the one thing Cal does not tolerate, you cannot be soft. You can be a lot of things. You can be mean. You can be this. You can what? I'm not going to start naming negative traits, okay? But the one thing you can't be when you step between those sidelines, you better not be soft or Cal has no patience for you. So with the way the season ended, you knew they were going to go get some toughness in the paint. And first off, they get it with Nick Pringle. 9.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. I don't think it's a coincidence that one of his best games, ironically, came in that Arkansas game against South Carolina, when, if you remember, that was the game that Arkansas had, 14, 15 points at the half. This was late in the regular season. And Pringle balled out in that game, 18 points, 9 rebounds in that game. He also had 16 and 14 in the regular season finale against Tennessee. Finished overall with double figures in scoring in 5 of South Carolina's last 9 games. And so sometimes the great thing about the portal, you get an older player, there's no secrets or confusion about what you're getting or what you're expecting when you're bringing in a player. This isn't an 18-year-old kid. This isn't he wants to get a rebound and take the ball 94 feet up the floor, wants to shoot a bunch of threes. No, this is a kid that in 4 years of college basketball has shot a grand total of 3 3-point attempts. Went 0 for 3 this year on those 3-point attempts, okay? And so I just bring it up because not everything is for everybody. And the one thing about Cal, he doesn't care if you're a big guy that doesn't shoot a lot, he wants his big guys in the paint, rebounding, being physical, being tough, being mean. So Nick Pringle delivers that. And then I'll take it a step further. I think Malik Ewan delivers that in spades. Okay, so Malik Ewan, it's so funny. First of all, both these guys have been on commit watch for probably about 2 weeks now. I mean, I remember getting a tip at the Final Four. Oh, Malik Ewan could commit any day now. Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago, okay? But I only bring it up because Malik Ewan, I'll be real, kind of didn't watch a ton of Florida State this year. Just, it's whatever, right? They were bad. They were uninteresting. They didn't win a lot. But the one thing about Florida State under the previous head coach, Leonard Hamilton, they valued size, they valued athleticism, and they valued toughness. When Florida State had things going, think about all those crazy athletic guys that they had on that roster. They had, Scotty Barnes, and Patrick Williams was a top 5 pick, and Devin Vassell. I mean, these are all guys, crazy athletic, big wingspans, defensive whiz, whatever. And I think that's a little bit about what you get with Malik Ewan. 6'11", 230 pounds. So he is definitely the Jonas Adu replacement. And he averaged 14 points and 7.5 rebounds per game this past season at Florida State. Thing about this kid, much like Nick Pringle, he ain't a 3-point shooter. And again, not everybody has to shoot 42% from 3. It's okay. As long as you know that that's what you're getting, and as long as the coaching staff has expressed, hey, we don't even want you to shoot threes, that can actually be a very good thing if you're a head coach and a player, as long as that relationship is there. And so this news isn't surprising, Both of these players have been on commit watch for weeks at a time, to the point that I think my poor buddy John Neighbors was about to go gray with just waiting for any news to come down. I should mention, after Nick Pringle committed, I saw this, Tyler Ulis tweeting out, boom, ×2, meaning that Tyler Ulis was expecting a second commitment. And so I just bring it up because this was expected. This was important, to say the least. And now all of a sudden, Arkansas goes from a team that has a bunch of questions to one that might not, depending on how the rest of the offseason goes. Now, the big thing for Arkansas right now, and this was one of the reasons why I kind of felt like, I don't want to say Arkansas fans shouldn't worry, because every fan base, I know how fans are, you're allowed to worry and be concerned. But I just bring it up because if you're Arkansas, and I was saying this all along, is that the most important recruiting that John Calipari was going to do is now to retain the players that were already on your roster. I'm not saying any of them are coming back. What I am saying is, the bottom line is, if you're Calipari, the key was never you had to find 7 players in the portal, right? I thought that was such a, misrepresentation of Arkansas coming out of the season. I saw, even on Monday night, they missed on the Jerron Pierre kid who ended up committing to SMU, and people are like, oh, Cal can't recruit the portal. I'm like, didn't he just get Nelly Davis and Jonas Adu last year on top of DJ Wagner, on top of Big Z, on top of Adu Thero? First of all, he recruited a first-round pick out of the portal. His name was Adu Thero. Now, he happened to follow him from Kentucky. But I only bring it up because I never really bought the idea that Cal can't recruit the portal. It was more, they just didn't have a lot of needs, and the biggest recruiting that Cal can do is bring back the guys from last year's team. To me, listen, this is another one. I think we're going to start getting answers on what this team looks like in the coming days. As I said, you have 4 players committed in the class of 2024. Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, 2 guards in the backcourt, plus Isaiah Sealy, kind of a projectable player out of the state of Arkansas. Then you have the big guy from overseas. Well, now you have two big guys in Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. And I think, to me, the big question is, who are you going to get back from this past season? Because to me, the most important recruiting you're going to do now is retaining some guys on this roster. To me, I'll be real. Some Arkansas fans may disagree. I still think the X factor, and there's 3 of them really, but I think one of the most important players is DJ Wagner. Listen, I know I've been a little bit of a DJ stan, but I think by the end of the year, you saw the value that he had as a guard in college basketball. Now, I want to be clear, since every time I say something, if things don't go that way, I get crushed in the comments. We'll get to Lamar Wilkerson in a minute, okay? As of right now, it feels very 50-50 if DJ Wagner is going to be back or not. Every day, it's some days you feel like he's going to leave. Some days you feel like he's not. Some days you feel like he's going to go pro. Some days you feel like he's going to hit the portal, whatever. Whatever DJ decides is not up to me. But to me, if I was Cal, that's the guy that I want back, because you need veteran guards in college basketball. Here's the other thing, too. A lot of these teams in the SEC are having to replace a ton off last year's team. Auburn's going to basically have a whole new roster. Tennessee's going to have a whole new roster. Ole Miss is going to have a whole new roster. Florida's going to have an entirely new backcourt. If you can bring back DJ Wagner as a third-year SEC player, I love that situation. But I also know that from DJ's perspective, he's sitting there saying, well, wait a second. Now you have 2 5-star freshman guards. Is there going to be a spot for me? Am I going to have the ball? Am I going to play off the ball? Am I going to be a third guy? Am I coming off the bench? So obviously that needs to be decided behind the scenes. I am not speculating on whether he does come back or not. I am just saying that for me, that would be my personal number 1 priority. Number 2, listen, Carter Knox. I mean, Carter Knox was a dog late in the season. 20 points against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, 15 against St. John's in the round of 32. And he's a guy, listen, we talked about this the day after the season ended. He's the kind of guy that could come back, be that, late second round pick this year, and all of a sudden, boom, he becomes like a top 10 pick a year from now. 6'6", shot the 3 ball pretty well at 35%, and he was just a very confident player going into the final few games of the season. You get him back with an offseason. You get him back with confidence going into 25-26. Yeah, that's a dog, and that is a guy that everybody has to be on alert for. Billy Richmond, you guys know I love Billy Richmond, soft spot for Billy Richmond. I've said it a million times. He reminds me, I told my buddy Matt Jones, the former Arkansas football and basketball player who hosts with Phil Elson, I said Billy Richmond kind of reminds me of the kid at football, the kid that played on everybody's high school football team. It was like his first day at practice, and he didn't really know what he was doing, but he was going a million miles an hour, and sometimes he's running through the wrong gap, and sometimes he's missing tackles, and sometimes he's blowing up plays 10 yards in the backfield, but the effort is never questioned. That's Billy Richmond. 16 points in that win over St. John's. They don't beat St. John's to go to the Sweet 16 without Billy Richmond. I would like him back. And then I think, to me, as much of an X factor as anybody is, of course, Trevin Brazile. Listen, Trevin Brazile is awesome. And I've referenced this a few times. I know it was an up and down year for him, but I thought Jay Billis, who I can be critical of Jay Billis, if you watch the games, because Trevin only averaged about 7 points, 5 boards. If you watch the games, though, late in the season, remember, and by the way, I see the Indiana fans starting to infiltrate the chat. We're going to get to them in a minute. But I only bring it up because Trevin Brazile, late in the year, we talked about this, is that with Trevin Brazile, Jay Billis said this during one of the broadcasts. I think it was in the SEC tournament. He said, sometimes you need to be needed. And Trevin Brazile was a player that early on in the season was kind of buried behind Adu Thero, buried behind even Jonas Adu, trying to find his role. You couldn't really figure it out. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, he was one of the best players on the team. 11 points and 12 boards against Kansas in round 1, 11-5 against Texas Tech, 8-8 against St. John's, and oh, by the way, 15-11 against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, that loss at the buzzer. So to me, Arkansas, a huge day. But now is the fun part. Now is the interesting part. Now you have the front court pieces in place. You have the 2 stars, or you have the 2 big guys in place. You have the 2 star freshmen in place. I think you need the vets back. I think you need that retention. You look at the teams that had success this year: Auburn retention, Florida retention, on Tennessee retention, Houston retention. You go down the list. You need players back. To me, Arkansas needs their guys. All right, let me take a quick swig of water here. Indiana fans, come on in the chat, okay? I just spilled a little water. Don't worry. Torres is okay. All right, so let's where are we at here? Let's switch gears. And I do want to talk about a player that I have certainly talked a lot about over the last couple weeks. And by the way, we'll get to some of your questions, comments in a second. Anybody, obviously we'll prioritize super chat. So anybody drops a super chat, we'll get to that first. We'll get to some questions in a minute. But what I want to do now, I want to spend a few minutes talking about a guy that we have certainly talked about a lot here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel over the last couple weeks. That is a guard. That is a player named Lamar Wilkerson. Okay. So Lamar Wilkerson, 6'5" guard. We just talked about Arkansas. Originally, he is from Ashdown, Arkansas. And he's kind of an interesting story because he was a player that entered the portal very early on in the cycle. Okay. And so it felt like early on, enters the portal. He's obviously linked to Arkansas, whatever. Then it goes quiet. And then just the last probably 10 days, it just felt like that recruitment ramped up big time. Okay. About a week or so ago, he cuts his list down to 4, says, I'm going to visit Auburn, Ole Miss, Indiana, and Kentucky. He ends up visiting Indiana and Kentucky, then decides to cancel the next 2 visits, says he'll make a commitment this week. I will be honest, because I know I'm going to get crushed in the comments. I made a video last night because I felt like everything was trending towards Kentucky. Final visit is Kentucky. Cancels his final few visits. Seems like he's having a great time at Keeneland Racetrack with Mark Pope and all those horses. Well, yeah, I was wrong because, probably about 3 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday, Lamar Wilkerson, guard, Sam Houston State, commits to, drum roll please, it ain't the Kentucky Wildcats like I thought. Lamar Wilkerson gets a commitment to the Indiana Hoosiers. How about Darren DeVree? I think there is no doubt that this is the biggest commitment of the Darren DeVree era so far. Let's break it all down. I should mention, by the way, like all of these other teams, we do have a Torres on Indiana page, Torres on IU. My buddy Caleb, Indiana student, he's just a freshman. He's helping me with that Indiana page, Torres on Indiana, for all of your late-breaking Indiana news. Let's go ahead and get to this commitment because this is really big, okay? So first off, Lamar Wilkerson. We've talked about him. But you talk about a dude that I think is going to step in and have immediate success at the high major level in college basketball next year. This kid is it, okay? 6'5", averaged 20.5 points per game. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on Indiana page. 20.5 points per game. And this stat is the one that blows me away. 44.5% shooting from three. 44.5% shooting from three. That is insane. Now, it's worth noting, as other people have pointed out, and I think accurately, this isn't a kid that just stands behind the three-point line, but he did take, and it's worth noting here as well, 7.5 three-pointers per game last year, okay? So it's one thing you shoot 44.5% from three, and you take 24 on the entire season, or you take 31 on the entire season. Lamar Wilkerson took almost 8 per game, and as I said, a grand total of 107 on the, 245 on the season, and he made 44.5% of them. So the dude is a pure bucket. I said it as soon as he entered the portal. He reminds me of Chaz Lanier. Mid-major guy, one great year of college basketball. To his credit, in this world, he can transfer up, and now he's an Indiana Hoosier. Listen, first of all, like I said, I owe Hoosiers fans an apology. Who's your daddy? Whatever. Slap Torres across the face because he was dead wrong on this one, okay? But listen, this is a big one for Darren DeVree, okay? And of course, whenever, other schools lose a guy, they paid more money, they paid this, they paid that. What I thought was interesting was Lamar Wilkerson saying, if I went to Kentucky, he did an interview with Field of 68, if I went to Kentucky, I'd be just another guy. I want to be the missing piece at Indiana. And so the one thing I will say, in that reaction video to on Monday about Lamar Wilkerson, the one thing I did say was pretty straightforward, is I said, I think at Kentucky, he's the final piece, but I said, I think at Indiana, he's probably the most important piece. Because you look at how Darren DeVree wants to play, okay? So first of all, I don't think last year was necessarily the best reflection of how Darren DeVree wants to play. He was at West Virginia last year. I don't think he really had the resources to succeed there. And not resources in a negative way, but, he had to build a roster on the fly last year without Indiana's resources. And he put together a really good team that probably should have been in the NCAA tournament, but was one that only shot 33% from behind the three-point arc. And so part of it was, his son gets hurt, Tucker DeVree, who we'll talk about in a minute. The other is that you kind of take a chance on some guards, and some of them work out and some of them don't. But the three-point shooting, I don't think was where they wanted it to be a season ago. And so I bring it up because fast forward, you look at the team that he is putting together now, they have a chance to be really good, okay? Putting aside Lamar Wilkerson, Tucker DeVree, his son, is coming in. We talked about him when Darren DeVree got the job. Listen, I know there's all sorts of talk about what happened at West Virginia. Was he really hurt? Why didn't he play? Blah, 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 blah. I have not gotten any truth to rumors that he basically tanked because he knew his dad was getting the Indiana job or his dad shut him down or whatever. I don't know the truth. What I do know is when he is on the floor, this dude is a baller, okay? 2 years ago at Drake, when he was there with his dad, averaged 21.5 points per game, 37% three-point shooting. This past year was averaging 15 points per game on 47% three-point shooting. And it wasn't like he was doing it against stiffs. 26 points against Arizona in the battle for Atlantis, 16 points against Gonzaga in the battle for Atlantis. And this was a guy that, like I said, shooting a blistering 47% from three, 8 three-pointers made against Arizona in his second to last game playing. So you have Tucker DeVree, 6'7", coming in, playing with this team. The guy that I love, and we've talked about him a lot, Reed Bailey. Okay, so Reed Bailey, if you remember, by the way, doesn't that sound just like an Indiana name? There was Damon Bailey, and there was, there was, I guess, Neil Reed. We don't want to talk about that one. But Reed Bailey, okay? So Reed Bailey was at Davidson. 6'10", by the way. 18.5 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. At 6'10", shot 41.5%. So we mentioned this a few weeks ago, okay? What stands out to me about Reed Bailey is, first of all, remember the story that Steph Curry was hired as the assistant GM at Davidson? There was a lot of talk that it was basically to retain this guy. Basically, they were like, hey, we need some help raising money and getting some money in this program so that we can keep this guy. He ends up hitting the portal. His recruitment was pretty quiet. You don't really know who was going after him. But we're talking about a big man who averaged 18.8 points per game, 41% shooting from three. And I think he has a chance to be really, really, really good. Indiana has also added Connor Enright, who played for Darren DeVree 2 years ago at Drake, was at DePaul this past year. And I think the cool part is they're not done. Could they be in the mix for Elijah Freeman, superstar D2 player that's transferring up? I think Tennessee might be in the mix there as well. Couple other guys. But the point I'm trying to make is you start to see how this team is coming together. It's hard not to like the pieces that are in place. Tucker DeVree, was again, 21 points per game when healthy last year, 37% three-point shooter, 47% this year. Reed Bailey, 18.5 points per game, 41% three-point shooter. Now you add Lamar Wilkerson to the mix, 44.5% from three. It's a pretty darn good team. And I'll say this, you start looking around the Big Ten. Listen, the top of the Big Ten is going to be really good. UCLA is going to be good. Purdue's going to be good. Michigan is certainly going to be good. I would love to know what their NIL budget is right now. But there's a lot of ground in the middle and the bottom of the Big Ten where Minnesota's starting over the new coach. Northwestern is whatever. Michigan State, what are they in this NIL world? I know they're coming off an Elite Eight, but what are they in this NIL world? You think about the rest of the Big Ten. Love Coach Muss at USC, but they're trying to figure things out. Oregon, Washington, it's much the same. I think there are going to be a lot of wins to be had in this Big Ten if you can finish out this roster strong. So I think that's the cool part. That's the part that I'm most excited about, is to see how Darren DeVree finishes things out, because I still think there are a lot of spots. There are a lot of spots to be filled. And I think the big thing right now, you got to get a point guard, right? You have shooting on the wing. You have size down low. You have shooting with your big guys. But the big question for me is, can you go ahead and find a point guard? Can you go ahead and get that next guy? But I'll tell you what, Lamar Wilkerson, man, he is an awesome player, and this is a celebration for Indiana. I don't think it's hyperbole to say this is the biggest commitment that you've gotten. Adds so much, going to step in, be expected to contribute right away. This is huge. This is good. This is big news for Indiana. And Darren DeVree, to me, listen, I'm updating my top 25 as we speak. I think Indiana is probably a piece away from being right in the conversation as a top 25 team going into next year. Got to get it done, but this is the biggest piece yet. Kentucky fans, listen, I don't know what to say other than that I screwed up, but, listen, Kentucky's going to get their guy. You have Otega Oweh, we assume, coming back. This would have been a nice cherry on top of the pie, or cherry on top of the cake, but he got plenty of time to figure out a plan B. I think the big thing for Kentucky, it's a little bit like what we talked about with Arkansas. You got to go ahead and retain the guys in your building. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back into some of your questions. When we come back, I do want to go ahead and I want to get to some of your questions, if I can find one. It just seems like everyone's yelling at each other. Want to get to some other news. UConn, a big week for them. And then also, did you see this story? Tyron Stokes, #1 recruit in the class of 2026. He's taking a visit this weekend. I don't think he's playing high school basketball next year. I think he's playing college basketball. We will take a quick break. We will talk about all of that. That is next. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at FioBox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned.
really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to FioBox.com. That's FIOBOC. FioBox.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to FioBox. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to FioBox. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So I'll tell you what, nothing has ever become more irrelevant more quickly than me saying less than 30 seconds ago, got to see what happens with Otega Oweh. We assume he's coming back to college basketball. Why is that? It is because just moments ago, we got news that Otega Oweh is set to declare for the NBA draft. Now, he is retaining his college eligibility. So let's go ahead and take just a few minutes to talk about this. We'll maybe wrap with Tyran Stokes. UConn fans, I'm sorry. We will have to wait for some other news because I don't know if we're going to get to Malachi Smith on today's show. Okay, so if you're just joining us, we talked about the news that Lamar Wilkerson is headed to Indiana. And if you're just joining us, you know that basically I just said on this show, point blank, I said, listen, none of it really matters as long as Otega Oweh comes back. Well, as I said just moments ago, we found out that Otega Oweh is officially going to declare for the draft. But the good news is, if you're a Kentucky fan, he is leaving his college options open. And so let's go ahead and discuss this from all angles. First of all, let me say this. Let me start with just some facts here. Otega Oweh, to me, was one of the great surprises in a good way in college basketball this year, as far as I'm concerned, okay? I remember doing all these shows at this time last year when UK was putting together its first roster under Mark Pope. And we talked about Lamont Butler and how good I thought he could be. We talked about Kobe Brea, how good I thought he could be. We talked about Amari Williams, how good I thought he could be. And so I only bring it up because the one guy that, to quote the Shaq meme, that I just was not familiar with your game, it was Otega Oweh, the transfer from Oklahoma. This was a guy that, listen, averaged 11 points per game, 37% three-point shooting. But if you watched Oklahoma, nothing really stood out about him. Didn't feel like he was a difference maker in any way, shape, or form. And I think in hindsight, that was probably more of an Oklahoma thing than an Otega Oweh thing, because it wasn't just Otega Oweh who was really good the second he left Oklahoma. It was also Milos Uzan, who was a starter on Houston's national runner-up team in the Final Four this year. Both of them were at Oklahoma. Both of them leave. Both of them thrive. But at the same time, here's the bottom line, is that when I look at this Kentucky team, I think Otega Oweh was one of the surprise breakout stars in all of college basketball this year. 16 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, the three-point percentage dropped to 35%. One, that's not bad. Two, it's also worth noting that he took about 25 more threes this year than he did a year ago. But three, here's what stood out to me about Otega Oweh. To me, Otega Oweh became a true college basketball star this year, and there are two things that really stood out. One, first of all, and this is no disrespect to anybody else, but by the end of the year, he was the only guy, and I give him so much credit, that every single night you knew what you were getting from him, okay? So you look at Kentucky's situation, you look at what happened with Kentucky, okay? Lamont Butler, this is no disrespect to Lamont. You guys know I love Lamont, known him since he was 13, 14 years old. But Lamont Butler was incredible early in the year. Then he goes down with a shoulder injury. Then he comes back. He re-injures it. He comes back. And by the end of the year, he clearly was not the same guy. That's not a knock on him. That's not to say he was a disappointment or didn't live up to it. It's just the fact that he had injury after injury. Jackson Robinson, slow start to the year, finally picks things up, gets injured. All of a sudden, boom, just like that. Jackson Robinson's out of the lineup. He tries to come back, ironically, against Oklahoma, gets hurt, is out for the year. Andrew Carr dealt with a back injury. Amari Williams was really good, but had moments where you just wanted a little bit more of him. And then there was Otega Oweh, who was just legitimately freaking awesome every single time he took the court. And that was the thing that stood out to me, is that every single night, while this guy's out of the lineup, while this guy's in the lineup, while this guy's doing this, while this guy's doing that, Otega Oweh just delivered. I mean, what was it? It wasn't until what? About late February when Otega Oweh finally had a game where he didn't score double figures. Kentucky ended up playing, let me see here, let me get my stats right. They ended up playing 36 games. Otega Oweh scored double figures, 33 of them. And, of the ones that he didn't, I mean, let's be realistic. The team was so beat up that he was kind of the focal point of the scouting report. So he showed up every single game. And I think the big thing was he played his best in his in when Kentucky needed him. We know about the buzzer beater the first time they played Oklahoma. We know about the buzzer beater the second time that they played Oklahoma. We know about 27 points in that return to Oklahoma, or in the SEC tournament, 28 points in the return to Oklahoma, 24 points in a game against Ole Miss, 21 points against Ohio State. Ohio State's the perfect example. He was the only one that showed up in that game. You go on and on down the list, was excellent against Duke with 15 points. And so I just bring it up because he was a guy that was better than I thought, came to play every single night. And the positive part was he turned into a star. Now, the negative is when you turn into a star, you're going to get noticed from the NBA. And so let's talk about the positive and negative of this NBA thing. First of all, I think it's pretty clear. He's declaring to maintain eligibility. And this is something that even in this NIL portal world where, you might make more money playing college basketball, it's never declaring is still a thing that I think a lot of people are going to do, because at the very least, if you have eligibility left, you want to get in front of NBA scouts. It's not always about declaring to stay in the draft. It is sometimes declaring just to let NBA people know a little bit about you. Let me get you and let me get in your facility. Let me work out in front of your people. Let me talk to your front office people, talk to your coaching staff, talk to whatever. So yeah, maybe I'm going to be a second round pick this year, but now you have a baseline. So next year, we're not starting this process over. So to me, even a player in this NIL world declaring doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% going to not return to college basketball. But obviously with Otega Oweh, the athleticism is there. The scoring is there. I do think, on the surface, you have to be at least a little bit worried about the possibility that Otega Oweh may not be playing college basketball next season. And so it'll be interesting to follow, because let's talk about positive and negative. It'll be interesting to follow to see what happens. Now, to me, I would never advise. I don't tell people what to do. Okay. This is one thing. If you're new to this show, we don't say somebody made the right decision, the wrong decision to return to college to go pro. Some kids don't like school. Some kids are ready to become a professional. Some kids need money. Sometimes the money in college isn't as good as you think. And so I just bring it up because if I was personally advising, I would say if you're not a for sure, not only a first round pick, but a pretty high first round pick, you should probably come back to college basketball because you're going to make more money at Kentucky. We don't have the exact dollar amounts for any of these players, but if star players are demanding $3 million in the portal, like a Donovan Dent, like a whoever, Otega Oweh is a $3 million player. I mean, if we're going through players that in theory could be the 20 most impactful players in college basketball next year, Otega Oweh is pretty near the top of the list. Okay. And so when I look at Otega Oweh, I just think that he is going to make a lot of money in college basketball next year, and he doesn't have to rush it if he's not ready to go play in the pros. And so to me, I think it becomes very interesting to see what his next step is. Now, if you're Kentucky, it's kind of that chicken and the egg thing. You want him to be successful, but you don't want him to be so successful that he ends up declaring. If Kentucky let's do negative first. Let's do glasses half empty, then we'll do glasses half full. The glasses half empty is obviously if he declares, that's a very tough situation, okay? It's a very tough situation because if he declares, he's not only a star player, but let's call a spade a spade. You are not going to get a player of his caliber. If he's going to declare, it's probably going to be, mid-May to late May that he announces that he's actually staying in the draft. And so if he declares, you're not getting a player of his caliber in mid to late May, almost certainly. Now, I will say it'll clear up some money, so if anybody that's available, you can go all in on. But the portal closes next week. And so if a player is not in the portal, you can't get him into the portal in mid-May if Otega Oweh decides to go pro. So if you're a Kentucky fan, it is again, whatever you want to call it, chicken and the egg, whatever, of you want Otega Oweh to be successful, but you're hoping that he isn't so successful that he isn't going to come back to college basketball next year. If he doesn't come back, we can have the conversation about the state of Kentucky basketball. But at the same time, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow if you're Kentucky. Now, the positive with that is this. He can go into the draft process, he can get feedback, and he can come back a better player next year. And I think, to me, if I'm a Kentucky fan, that's the more likely scenario. The bottom line is, again, very good player, but he's not a finished product. And again, I think what it comes down to is, do you want to go and maybe be the 27th pick, and then you're fighting for a roster spot, you're fighting for a roster, you're just hoping to get in the first round, and you're going to spend most of this time in the G League? Or do you want to come back next year after this past season when you average 16.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds? Do you want to come back and average 19 a game or 20 a game and be a potential first-round pick? Listen, there are a lot of guys that could go pro, that we've seen could go pro, that end up coming back the extra year and improving their draft stock. I think that's the one thing that's changed about the NBA draft process over the last probably 10 to 15 years that I've been doing this. It used to be all upside, all upside, all upside, all upside, all upside. Now, most of these veteran teams, they need older players to step in and contribute. And now, if you're a player that can step in and you get better year over year over year, you're going to get your shot at the NBA level. I think as a UConn guy, Jordan Hawkins could have declared after his freshman year and been a second-round pick and grinded through the G League, whatever, comes back, wins a national championship at UConn, ends up being a lottery pick with the New Orleans Pelicans. Donovan Clingan's a good example of that. Could have been a first-round pick after his first season. Instead, decides to return to college basketball for another year, ends up having a great deal of success, and ends up being a top 10 pick. I'm trying to see right now some mock drafts of, let me see here, of some guys that would fit the bill this year. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, guys that could have been drafted last year that decide to come back. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm just trying to find some guys. Not a lot of good ones this year. Walter Clayton. Walter Clayton's the best example, right? Second round pick last year, decides to come back. Only reason I bring it up is to very simply say that, in my opinion, if you are Otega Oweh, I think you're going to have good options. Right now, I would guess he's not going to be a first-round pick. If he's not a first-round pick, I think he's coming back. But this is obviously big news for Kentucky. And if you're Mark Pope, I'll say this. I'll say this with Mark Pope. I think you're going to be in a tough spot, kind of the same spot that Grant McCasland is in at Texas Tech, that Rick Pitino was in with RJ Lewis. We are now in the era where if you declare, we kind of got to know, right now, do you think there's a possibility you're staying? Because if you think you're staying, we kind of have to recruit over you, and basically we can't hold your spot. We can't find anybody of your capabilities. So anyway, I bring it up because that's a long way down the road. Otega Oweh has declared for the draft. I think the big question becomes what's next for him. And I think, as importantly, what would be next to Kentucky if he does not come back to college? All right. I do want to go ahead and wrap. This topic feels a little bit less relevant given all of the news of the day, but we had it in the rundown, so I figure why not? Let's go ahead and talk one more topic before we get out of here. We have been all over the map today. What I do want to switch gears and what I do want to wrap the show on, by the way, the chat is on fire, mostly just everybody arguing with each other, which is great. I love it. But what I do want to wrap the show with is this. I want to wrap the show with that gentleman right there, the number one high school player in the class of 2026, a player by the name of Tyran Stokes. Okay, so here's the bottom line. It feels weird. We're in the middle of portal season. We still have one uncommitted player in the class of 2025 that needs to find a home. That's Nate Ament, okay? And we're going to talk about Nate Ament another time down the road. But at the same time, Tyron Stokes is a very interesting player for two very specific reasons. One, very good player. Two, and I think this is an important part as well, Tyron Stokes, by every account, including an assistant coach I just talked to last week, it feels for certain like he is going to reclassify, like he is not going to be playing high school basketball next year. And it feels like he is going to be coming to a college near you in a minute. And so with it, let's go ahead and discuss Tyron Stokes, because we did get a big piece of recruiting news about him on Tuesday that I think is worth discussing. First of all, for those of you who haven't seen him play, Tyron Stokes, fascinating player. Okay. He's about 6'5", 6'6". Again, the number one high school player in the class of 2026. So he just finished his junior year. 6'6" forward. Really quickly, I want to pull up all his essentials here. 6'6" forward. He actually played. This is a crazy story. He played at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. I will tell you, I moved probably about 6-8 weeks ago. Was driving around the neighborhood probably about a week ago. About a half a mile from me is Sherman Oaks High School, Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, where Tyron Stokes played. Now, the season was already over before I moved, but it doesn't change the fact that, he's going to high school probably about a half a mile from where I live right now, okay? But 6'7" forward, interesting background. He's originally from Louisville, but he's played all over during his high school years. I believe he played at Prolific Prep as a junior, his senior, as a sophomore. This year he played at Notre Dame in Sherman Oaks in California. But a little bit of background on his game. And by the way, I am so stuffed up, so I apologize. I'm trying not to sniffle into the microphone. But played at Sherman Oaks this year. He actually played AAU with AJ DeBonsa and the Oakland Soldiers a season ago. But 6'7", he's kind of like a power, he's like a power player that can play on the perimeter or the low post. Okay, I mean, he's a perimeter player, but he plays who he almost reminds me of? This is a bad comp, and I'm going to get crushed in the comments. Reminds me a little bit of Darian Williams, the kid from Texas Tech, who's like a bigger bodied player. He's not quite that big, but he's got a powerfulness to his game, especially, by the way, for a player who is still really young. So 6'7", he weighs, 230, 240, is really physical. And then I think what is interesting about him is a few things. Is that, first of all, we saw a report, I believe the kid's name was Sam Lance. So this is why we're talking about him. There's two reasons why. One, we'll get back to Sam Lance in a minute. The first reason why, I saw a report from Adam Zagoria from Zag's blog that Tyron Stokes is going to take a visit to Kansas this weekend. Now, that might not seem like a big deal. Visiting Kansas, whatever, who cares? Why does it matter? Torres, why are you talking about this? Blah, 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 whatever. Well, here's the other part. Sam Lance, who works for Adam Zagoria, put out an article about 2 weeks ago that said Tyron Stokes is not going to play AAU basketball this offseason. And so because of it, it feels almost certain that this kid, who is only a junior in high school, is going to reclassify and going to play college basketball next year. And that is why we are talking about him, okay? So 6'7" forward, going to visit Kansas this weekend, and I think he is going to reclassify, okay? I'll even take it a step further. I actually talked to an assistant coach this weekend we were just talking about all sorts of stuff, and I don't want to name the school or the conference, and I mentioned Tyron Stokes, and he said, oh, yeah, he's definitely reclassifying. He's definitely playing college basketball next year. So it's interesting because it feels like he is going to play college basketball next year, taking his first visit this weekend to Kansas. And I'll tell you what, this could be the next thing that we kind of monitor and analyze and overanalyze on this channel because, again, I think this kid is about to be playing college basketball in 2025, 2026. First of all, interesting story about him. He's an 07 birthday, okay? So he will only be 18 years old this year, which means that he is going to have to take the Jaden Quaintance path. Most of the time when you reclassify in high school, it's basically because you are a year behind. And remember, to be draft eligible, you have to be 19 years old and a year removed from high school. So if you're turning 18 in a calendar year, let me do the math on this. No. That's actually wrong. I'm catching myself in real time. So if he was born in 07, then that would make him eligible for the 2026 NBA draft. Okay, so that now makes sense. So he'll be 18 years old in October. Then he'll be 19 in 2026. So yes, that would make him draft eligible. So that would make sense as to why he wants to reclassify. The bottom line is he needs to get to college this year so he can be eligible for the 2026 draft. Remember, you have to be 1 year removed from high school basketball, and you have to be 19 years old in the year of the draft, okay? And so with Tyron Stokes, it becomes interesting because he will be draft eligible in 2026, but he has to get to college this season. And so the question becomes, where could he potentially play? I think it's really early, but like I've told you with all this portal stuff, it feels like there are a lot of schools that have a lot of spots open that they are not going to be able to fill with guys in the portal. And I've said it a million times, whether it's Mark Pope, Bruce Pearl, John Calipari, Bill Self, Todd Golden, whoever, schools aren't going to go into 2025, 2026 without a roster that can compete. Nobody's punting on the 25-26 season. And so I just think it's going to be interesting to monitor this recruitment. Obviously, Kansas is a team right now that needs players, that needs bodies. And the one thing I'll say about Bill Self, I think he learned a lesson this year. They used to be a developmental school at Kansas. Well, now, in this NIL portal era, can you retain players for 2 or 3 years? And so if you're not a developmental school, you better have pros. And I think that was Kansas's biggest issue this year. They just didn't have difference makers. I like AJ Storr, committed to Ole Miss on Tuesday, by the way. I like Rylan Griffin going to Miami. Those aren't dudes that can take over games. Well, you have Darren Peterson. He is a difference maker. Number 1 player in the class of 2025. Him and DeBance are 1 and 1A. You have Darren Peterson. You need help around him. So does Tyron Stokes make sense as a potential player to play with Darren Peterson, where you go all in on young guys? You almost go with the old school Calipari approach of we're full speed ahead on freshmen. We're full speed ahead on young guys. We're going to bet on NBA talent and bet that by the end of the year, these guys figure things out. Would that be a fit? I think the other ones that are interesting, this kid is originally from Louisville. Louisville, the one thing we know about Louisville, they're not afraid to spend in the portal, in NIL, in transfers, in this, in that. And so if this kid is available, is that a kid that ends up at Louisville? They have Mikal Brown Jr., 5-star point guard, McDonald's All-American. They have a very good portal class with Isaac McNeely from Virginia, with Ryan Conwell from Xavier. It feels like they're kind of set at that small ball 4 with the Javon Hadley kid who was on the team last year. But Pat Kelsey, man, what does John Rothstein say about Pat Kelsey? All gas, no brakes. Would it totally surprise me to see this kid on that team? It wouldn't. So that's another school to just kind of keep your eye on. Let's keep it going. I mean, Kentucky, if I'm Mark Pope, and I think I might be losing Otega Oweh, this is probably a phone call that I would be making right now. Hey, dude, we don't need a commitment today, but there's a chance we could have a gaping hole on our roster in 2025, 2026 if Otega Oweh declares, we didn't get Lamar Wilkerson, whatever. So it will be very interesting to see. I think it's a little early to start naming schools, but he's visiting Kansas this weekend. And then as importantly, he's not only visiting Kansas, but he's from Louisville, obviously from Kentucky. And so we will see what happens there. By the way, obviously Kentucky has one of the best West Coast recruiters in America on their staff in Jason Hart. He has all sorts of ties all over the LA area. But this will be interesting to follow. I think this is not the first time we talk about Tyron Stokes this spring. All right, that was a monster show. By the way, did that without producer Matt today. I mean, I hate to brag, but one, I hope producer Matt gets better. He is very, very under the weather after San Antonio last week. But 2, I'll also say this. I felt like I don't even know what I felt like. I felt like LeBron with the Cavs there or something. I didn't have much help on that show, but we crushed it. To the thousands of you who watch live, we cannot thank you enough for your support. April is always a busy month for us, and we cannot do without you. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure you're following on social media, Aaron_Torres on Twitter, Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. By the way, thank you to our partners, Callipuffs and Callipuffs.com. We appreciate your support. May have a pretty big announcement for you, maybe not late this week, but early next week. But I'll tell you what, as long as there's college hoops stuff to talk about, we are full speed ahead on college hoops, but we are also monitoring this Nico situation very closely. Time for me to go. Appreciate your support. I'm going to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Thank you. Monster crowd on a Tuesday. We appreciate your support. Aaron Torres Pod.